48 debate now. We've already had a prayer and a pledge, so we're not going to have another prayer and another pledge. And so this is the debate for the candidates running for Ledge 48, which now is 3 Linden precincts, 8 Orem precincts, and 12 Provo precincts. We have 2 candidates running, and tonight we are joining with the Daily Herald, our county newspaper, to sponsor this debate. And our moderators tonight, in the black shirt, Randy Wright, the editor of the paper, and Billie Hesterman, who is a reporter there. And they will be asking the questions, and we'll let them do the introductions and so on.
Thank you, Marion. Right, I'm the editor of the Daily Herald. Billie Hesterman is a political reporter. And at my immediate left is Keven Stratton, candidate for the District 48. And to his left, Taz Murray. And for those of you who get them mixed up, you got these signs that remind you. Just to get going a little bit, you're sort of both new in the politics game. So why don't we just start with you, Keven, and then Taz, and maybe you could just tell us a little bit about yourself, not political views here. We'll get into that, but just something about your personal background, maybe, and maybe why you're interested in this.
Thank you, Randy. I was just talking, and I'm a 6th generation Stratton that's lived in this area. 6 generations. My great-great-grandfather, James, settled in the old Provo Fort, and then some of the family moved up on the Orem bench, been involved in farming, grew up on a fruit farm, cherries and peaches and all those fun things. Father of 8 children. I'm so grateful to my wonderful wife and who stands by me, and we met at BYU. I finished up a degree in finance there, had my good opponent's father, I just learned, is one of my favorite professors. Taught entrepreneurialism, and I was just telling him.
I'm sorry about that.
Well, I got the best of it all, so that was good. Told him one of my favorite lessons that he gave on those that died for our country. There have been many that have sacrificed much for what we have today. In fact, the first word of the Utah Constitution is grateful. Grateful to Almighty God. We have so much to be grateful for, and if you ask why I'm running, that's a big part of it. To ensure that we work together, to create the right vision, to grow solutions together, and bring to fruition what is the very best in us, so we can be a beacon to those that we come in contact with. I graduated from the law school there, finished up that. I've been involved in several businesses. I'd probably farm if I had my choice, but we planted several hundred trees just a couple of years ago and plan on doing that again this spring. So that's
Great.
A little bit about Keven Stratton.
Thanks a lot. Taz?
Right. So I'm a product of Utah. I've been here. Is that better?
Much better.
Grew up here. I'm a product of public and private education in Utah. Started in the public schools in Bountiful. Graduated and went to BYU, and then went on to Harvard Business School. Married my wife of 27 years, who I'm very grateful for and proud of. She's a lot smarter than I am. In fact, one of my endorsements was, if we can't have Tammy, we'll settle for Taz. So I'm glad that she's by my side. We have 5 children, live in Provo. I borrowed money from my dad, who is here tonight, and started.
Raise your hand. I've got to see the dad. There he is.
There he is, right there, Professor Murray. Bought a candy company in Salt Lake by the name of Maxfield Candy, and started with it with about 100 employees, and grew it to be one of the 10 largest companies in our industry, in the candy industry in the United States, and then ended up selling some of those candy companies, and then I've hired guys to run the companies, and I've carved out some time that I would like to serve. I'd like to give back to the community.
Great, thank you. As most of you may know, we have 2 Republicans in this race. There is no other candidate. So this Republican primary is particularly important because the winner of that primary takes the seat. That's why we really thought it was important to have this debate, and hopefully will be informative and interesting. I want to just go to kind of a general question first, and this is before redistricting. Recently, District 48 was much more compact, and people kind of knew their neighbors and so forth. And now it spans several cities and 2 school districts, much more spread out, a different mix of constituents. How do you see yourself bringing this district together? Who are your constituents in your mind, and what are their needs? Just jump in.
Oh, I'll take that. I think it's a great opportunity. I think it's important that we have a district like this that brings communities together. I think we get a lot too much us versus them, and really it's all of us. So I think it's a great opportunity. As I've been out knocking doors, I've met a lot of people from the Alpine School District, and I've really enjoyed getting to know everybody in the district. It's been a lot of fun. I think we have a great district. We've got great people in the district, and it's been fun getting to know everybody. I think the important way to bring everybody together is we all have common goals. I think we all want improvement in education, and the fact that it spans two districts actually makes it better because we can learn from one another. So I think we need to do a lot more of things like that. But the fact that it spans two school districts in 3 cities, I think, is a good thing.
This is really a remarkable district. I was talking to Lyndon Mayer just the other night. And he said, well, you have 3 mayors. And I let him know that, well, you're just on the border, but we sure want to listen to you. We have 3, the mayors. We have a great diversity. We span from a high school, Provo High School. The majority of their students have lunch subsidy and all that economic challenges that can go along with that, to other schools across the board. We have several high schools within this district. We have education. We've got to get education right. That's something we can't miss on. But there's also a great diversity of ideas and notions and concepts. We're fairly agreed on the party that we support. However, within that, there's great capacity. There's professors and professionals across the board, and I've often said there's not a problem anywhere in the world that the capacity and resources and mind power in this district can't resolve if we work together and draw upon the resources and strengths that are here. I think it's a positive thing to have the 3. It adds and strengthens what we have, opportunities.
Okay, you brought up education. And I think correct me if I have misunderstood something here, but I believe you said that the Interstate 15 rebuild was a poorer choice for the state of Utah than more money for education. Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I don't think I said that, but
okay.
I think the Interstate rebuild has been one of the best construction projects in terms of, in terms of construction projects that have ever been performed in the state. What project have you ever known to come in under budget and get more than what you bargained for? So that interstate project has been a great thing. I do think that we have indebted the state. I mean, we've raised debt to spend money, and I think that's an important thing to note. I think necessarily so, but I think our next turn we ought to be focused a little bit more on education on the next go around. So. I don't know where that comment came from, but it wasn't from me.
Okay, good. I'm glad to hear that.
You know, as you talk to those that are in transportation, they recognize that the $1.75 billion expansion of I-15 has been a wonderful strength for not only now, but to meet the needs going into the future. What a wonderful thing it was. It came in almost $500 million under budget. And then the opportunity to not bond as much and spend some other resources to get the I-15 improved down to pace, and that's a real plus. But they acknowledge that now it's education's turn to have some focus and intention that needs to be. So that's.
Okay, let's drill down into that just a little bit, because the road project is a one-time expenditure. School funding is an ongoing expenditure. So do you really see that as a trade-off?
So let's start with how we're spending the money. It's not so much that we're spending so much money or spending money on education. I think we need to get the how we're spending it right before we can really fix the education problem. And it's not a problem. Let me restate that. I think education is doing a good job with what they have, but there is a system that we need to improve. I'm for education reform. And I think until we can get accountability into the education process, we're not going to get a lot of progress there. And by accountability, I mean, who's responsible for the kids' education at our schools? Who in the schools is responsible? Is it the teacher? Is it the principal? Is it the parent? Is it the superintendent? I would suggest that somebody needs to take responsibility, and I would suggest that the principal be responsible for the education in the school. But if the principal is responsible and accountable, then they need to be unfettered and allowed to run the schools in the way that they see best. The principal should be responsible to or accountable to the superintendent in the same way. But if you ask me to run a company or to run an organization, or any of you were asked to run an organization and weren't given the opportunity to pick who works for you, reward those who do a good job for you, and ask those that don't do a good job for you to leave. If you weren't able to do that, you would say, hey, look, education, our progress, our performance may not be it's not my responsibility anymore because I can't run it the way I'm supposed to. So my suggestion would be we need to get accountability into the school.
Can I just break in on this one? Because if the principals are running the show, where does the buck stop? I mean, we've seen it at Timpview High School. We've seen a lot of irregularities that are now being supported by the state auditor, and as practices that are going on elsewhere. Where does the buck stop?
The buck stops at the principal. I think the principal needs to be responsible for their school. I mean, I can tell, when I was in Disneyland with our friends, we got to the front of the line and they looked at each other and said, where's our kid? And the husband said, well, I thought you had her. And the other one said, well, I thought you had her. They ran back and there she is sitting in the stroller waiting for somebody to take her out. So, it was funny then, and we're happy it didn't work out worse, but that's what's going on in our schools in a major way. We don't have anybody that can stand up and say, I can take responsibility because I'm accountable for it, and I can run it, and I can make the decisions there.
Kevin, accountability in education.
Well, I have 12 principles I talk a lot about. Transparency, stewardship, accountability is one of them. That's absolutely key. What is the vision? What do we want here? We want to have the very best cutting-edge workforce that we can have as they finish so that they can support their families and strengthen the community, increase economic vitality. I believe there's a lot of right in our education, but we need to move forward in many ways and catch up. If you use the technology in your business that is available to our general across the board school classroom, you'd be out of business. There's technology, and what we can do there is vital. That's part of that big key. Accountability is absolutely critical. I'd say we all need to be on board. You need to have the superintendent, the principal, the teachers, we all need, and the parents, we all need to be vested and engaged in the process. Certainly, there's an opportunity to make some changes and move forward, certainly, but it requires all engaged in the process.
Let me ask, then, it sounds like both of you talked about accountability with education. How about now? Is it on now? Sorry about that. With accountability in education, then, are you both looking at like teacher incentive pay? Is that something that you'd look at as legislation to say we're going to start holding teachers accountable for how they're doing in their classroom, not based just on test scores, but based on maybe a set criteria of how they perform, based on evaluations from their principals? Are those things that you're willing to support as accountability?
Yeah, well, I think, again, it comes back to the principal's choice. If the principal wants that, that's what they ought to do. So the question then becomes, how do you, merit-based pay is a sort of emotional issue, and I think there's a lot of ways to determine and survey and find out how teachers are doing. Are teachers doing well? I sympathize with teachers. They're stuck in a system that we need to return nobility and honor to teaching because they work hard. I've spent about 900 hours at the local high school watching what teachers do and what they go through to accomplish what they do. And I think they're stuck in a system that, imagine, so when we bought Maxfield Candy Company, I went out and there was one guy who sat on a sack of sugar every day and told everybody what to do around him. And it wasn't a very good example. And we talked to him every week. And then finally, by the third or fourth week, I just said, you know what? It's time for you to move on. You need to find another job. And when he left that candy kitchen, everybody in the candy kitchen the next day applauded me when I walked in, and I couldn't figure out why. And they said, that guy has been sitting on that sack of sugar telling us what to do for the last 5 years. Somebody finally cares. Somebody cares enough to make an improvement here, and I can tell you the kitchen got cleaner, it got faster, it got more efficient. And I don't think we have that ability. If you go in and work every day and work your tail off and get the exact same pay increase that the person that doesn't work very hard gets all the time, that's the definition of socialism. And I don't think it works very well. I just don't think it does.
The best government is the government that's closest to the people. And when you're talking about how do we give incentive to the outcomes that we desire, and how do we avoid giving incentives to outcomes we don't desire, that's a good example. Currently, the pay of teachers is primarily based on tenure and level of education. Well, how about the interaction in the classroom and what you're doing to be a real teacher, to drill down and get the principles and the basics and all that goes into educating cutting-edge workforce, bring that to pass. So when we talk about incentive, it's important that we incentive to what we're valuing. For example, UVU is the largest university in the state of Utah, and it's the most efficient university. By the way, it's the most underfunded university as well. So what we're doing in a sense is we're telling them, thanks for your great efficiency, let's lower what we're giving you. So we need to think outside the box, and they're part of the solution. We need to listen, get the teachers, get the administrators, get the community, get parents involved in that process, and allow the incentives to flow to the outcomes that we desire.
Are we underfunding public education?
Well, we currently spend 62% of our budget on education. It's a $12,950,000,000 some odd. Well, let me give you an example. I was in a classroom in Provo High School, and I looked at the textbook, and the textbook that was first issued in 1988. And I talked to the teacher. What would be one thing you'd like to see? She said, I'd like to see more funding for textbooks. But really, that is a local issue, how they're going to spend the money. If we need to have more money for education, I would not advocate a tax increase. What I would say is that we need to look at the opportunity to strengthen our economic vitality, look at business education partnerships that can bring a perspective and resources into the school. In fact, you talk about funding, that's a tax issue. I'd like to see a tax incentive given to if they have a pallet of paper and they put it in the classroom, they save that school $1,000 because why should they not receive some sort of a tax voucher for what they put there? That type of focus, again, brings that type of, we give incentive to the outcomes that we're seeking. Are we underfunding education? That's the question.
Well, or unreasonably. Is there anything we can do about it? We have large family sizes in Utah, and we're spending actually quite a large percentage on education. So if we're going to add money to the system, where is it going to come from?
There's three places that I would advocate. Increasing economic vitality, getting the resources from our public lands, and that's a whole other discussion we can delve into if we'd like. And then business education partnerships. My experience over the last 20 years working and helping in the classroom would indicate that has been a successful model, business education partnerships. And when our economy is strong, there's help there. I think if we need to maintain 62% of our budget going to education, certainly.
We're dead last in funding in the United States in terms of states. So in terms of how much we spend per pupil, we're dead last. But I don't think that's the only issue. I don't think that is the issue. I think the issue is how we spend the money. Randy, I think you even had an idea, and I haven't talked to you about this, but I've heard of your idea of printing textbooks with using because using newspapers. So lower the cost. I mean, we could sell those books for $1 a piece or something if I understood it right. That's how we spend the money. How are we spending that money? So Finland, if there was a direct correlation between how much we spend and education outcomes, I'd be beating the drum about more money. But right now, it's not about more money. It's about how we're spending it. Finland spends half what we do per pupil and get twice the outcome. We went from 17th in math in the 34 industrialized countries to 31st in the last 10 years. So we cannot keep going that direction if we're going to compete in a global economy. And I can tell you, having a plant in China and one in Canada and joint ventures in Poland, I can tell you those kids are in it to win it, man. They go to school longer, they work harder, and that's who we're competing with. We're not competing with the other states as much, although in our district we are. So at the end of the day, it's how we're spending the money.
But don't they also send students into the trades if they don't measure up academically? That's something we don't really do in the United States.
They stratify. In Finland, they do stratify, and I think it's not, there's good ideas that come out of Finland. We ought to be paying attention. There's good ideas coming out of charter schools, and I don't know that we're paying enough attention to them. Like them or hate
Should
them.
the United States be doing that, stratifying, saying if the kid doesn't make the cut academically, move them off into another program?
They can move back and forth. In Finland, they can move from from a university level to a technical level. They can move back and forth if they show the aptitude. And if it works, I mean, look at some of the charter schools. They stratify. They have kids that are, third graders and sixth graders sitting in the same class in the same math class because that's the level that they're at. I guess I'm not very patient with, I think we need education reform, and I'm not very patient with all the reasons of why we're not reforming education. I think we need serious reform.
Let me understand what you did you say that Finland spends half of what we do per pupil?
Per student. That's correct, of Utah. And remember, so Utah is 50th.
Finland would be 110th then, is that what you're saying?
It'd be way less than us.
When we look at education, what we need to do is recognize that there are great solutions everywhere. The same pattern for one student is not going to be as effective across the board. So we look at charter schools, we look at public education in the traditional sense, we look at homeschooling. We need to take best practices and allow them to filter across the board.
But we just need more money, though, I guess. Sorry, Billy. But we need more money in the system. I mean, Andrew Holmes, running for the Senate, the state Senate, wanted to double the amount of money that Utah allocates to public education. That would not leave any money left over for state government.
Before we double our money, before we look at more money, I think we need to better utilize what we have. We have wonderful infrastructure, classrooms that sit empty most of the time. What can we do to better utilize the infrastructure so that we can spend reallocation? It may not be necessary. I would advocate not right now that we need more money, but better allocation of what we have and better utilization of the resources that are there.
Yeah, to that end, we could pay the teachers a lot more. We could pay them a third more if we went to year-round school. And I think that's not a bad idea. I think it's painful for a lot of us. But if we're really serious about education reform, we ought to be doing it because I think teachers should get paid more. At some point, they've got to get paid more. It needs to be a sustainable salary that people can make a profession of.
I'd like to take you both off the education discussion, unless you want to go back there with the answer to this. I'm curious about your first day as a state legislator and in the House of Representatives. I know that Mr. Stratton, you're already on in the House of Representatives, but I'd like you to talk about, obviously you'd be assigned to multiple committees, but which committee would you like to be assigned to and why? What are the differences you'd like to bring to the state legislature? And I understand, they're assigned to you to a point. Let's get beyond that. Let's just say you have free will and you can pick what you want to be on.
Somebody asked me recently, what are you going to do your first day of service? And I said, well, this service started for both my opponent and I started when we filed. There is a process of cultivating and planting the seeds that are meant to be harvested. Really, the legislative session is 45 days of the harvest. There's a lot that takes place ahead of time, tremendous amount. What would I would like to be involved in economic development. Certainly education is a key. There's a lot to do, drawing upon the resources that we have in terms of getting our public lands back in an appropriate, environmentally productive way, using those resources to fund education better, to strengthen economic development and all that we do. But at this point, obviously, we're going to have District 48. We're going to have a freshman representative. And so there's an opportunity to learn and look at those that have been there and meet and gain and garner all that you can as you do that. But there's some specific items of legislation that I desire to press forward on day one.
I would be interested in the Education Committee right away. I'd be interested in the federal lands issue because it does fund education, as Kevin said. I think I would be interested in, the state, the budget committee. I think there's some opportunities there. I think I have some business skills that I would like to apply at the state level.
Taz, did you put your name forward as a replacement for the remainder of Stephen Sandstrom's term?
I wasn't allowed to. I didn't live in that district, so no.
Okay.
My next question then, if you're staying with the state legislature, next year on July 1 of 2013 will mark the beginning of the HB 116 law, the immigration law. And there's still one more session to go in and maybe look at some changes with immigration policies on the state level. So I guess the first question should be, should that law go into effect? And then the second question would be, or if you have a differing view on it, what should be done about immigration before that law does go into effect?
So as a business guy, it's fairly, the law goes in the right direction, but it doesn't go all the way. So we hire people every year, and I think it goes in the right direction, but it doesn't go far enough. I think, first of all, our federal government failed us in terms of letting the number of illegal immigrants into the country that are here. So that's a problem to begin with, but now we're left to deal with it. So I think the issue for me is the state willing to indemnify me as an employer if I hire somebody that is now identified and has, they've identified themselves as an illegal alien, we've now registered them. I think that's the right thing to do. But then, if I hire them, I'm now knowingly hiring an illegal. It's against federal law to hire an illegal. And will I now be a target by the federal government to be charged $5,000 per person or whatever it is? I mean, I am tired of being the Department of Immigration because that's what I am. I've got to be a forensics expert when they walk in the door. I've got to do E-Verify after I hire them, after they've worked 3 days, and then I find out that they may not be legal, so they've got to leave, so I've wasted time on that. And then business is going to get penalized. Let's penalize business for hiring illegal aliens. And I think that's a problem. I think we go just in the wrong direction there. I grew up in a family where we sponsored Vietnamese immigrants, Vietnamese refugees. And Big Bob out there wouldn't let them take any government funds. And that was my first introduction into it. So they had to work and go to school, and they couldn't take government funds if they're going to live in our house. And as they progressed, that was tough for them, and they complained about it. Trong Van Long complained about it all the time, but after he got over that initial hurdle, he became a much more productive, much quicker integrated into our society than he would have otherwise. It would have taken him a lot longer. And his whole family is here now, and they're doing great. So for me, I think we go about it backwards. I think we provide social services and don't let them work, and I think that's a problem. So I like the law and the direction it goes because now they can work, and now they're documented, and now we can track them, and now we know what's going on. But I'm still a target. Now I become a target as a business. So it doesn't go quite, I think we got to get a little bit further.
But it's a step in the right direction, you think?
I say it's a step in the right direction.
Kevin?
House Bill 116 changed the whole dialogue of our whole country when we started to talk about immigration. Clearly, Article 1, Section 9 of the Constitution leaves dealing with immigration. It is a federal issue, and frankly, they have failed in this issue. So we're left to do with what the best we can. The state of Utah has been in the forefront in leading out and bringing immigration in a reasonable way. That bill, House Bill 116 does 4 things that I like. 4 things. It brings people of goodwill forward. They have to come and they have to report. They pay a penalty. They start paying taxes and they become involved in the workplace. Now, there are some things that need to be done. It's the only piece of legislation across the country that hasn't been enjoined in all the litigation. It has a pattern that we need to follow. So I love the principles and what we're talking about. It's a reasonable solution to the challenge we have, but yet there needs to be a lot of work. In fact, that'll be an issue that's going to heat up in this coming legislative session.
So you both think it's good, but still needs more work.
With House Bill 116, again, we were at a crossroads as a nation. And that's an example where people with courage stood up and made a difference and led the discussion nationally. So yes, it does, but the work is not done. The work is certainly not done.
What can you do as a state legislator in collaboration with your counterparts in other states to get a waiver from the federal government to allow Utah to continue and implement that law?
I think compacts with other states are really important, not only for this issue, but for a lot of others. So I think that's definitely the right direction. So reaching across the state boundaries is the right thing to do, not only for this, but for our federal lands and getting our federal lands back.
We support the efforts that are already underway. We continue to dialogue with our federal delegation and encourage them to, but we need to support them. This is an issue that's not going to be resolved by itself. We need to get on board and be one voice in this issue and recognize that it's a problem that we have to deal with. We can't ignore. We've got to secure our borders, certainly. But what are we going to do with the 30 to 40 million people that are here illegally?
Sorry. I'm the one making the noise. I apologize. Let me tie on to that then. So we've talked about 116. We've talked about also the federal lands issue that was passed in the recent session. Both those bills contain notes on them from the legislative attorneys stating these bills might be seen as unconstitutional. Are you both ready to go to the state legislature and look at passing bills that might be deemed unconstitutional?
Okay. Yes, absolutely. I think that the issue is there is so much at stake with the federal lands in both issues. I support both of them.
Wouldn't that money be better spent on schools than on lawsuits?
Heavens no.
There is, from our attorney. Look, there is so much at stake, Randy. I don't know.
Maybe let's define. It's a $3 million or $2.5.
Right.
What is it?
$2.5 million.
$2.5 million note and okay, we're talking about billions of dollars. If you could spend $2 and get 2,000, would you do it? Right. I mean, of course, it's a wise investment. So.
No, he's on the right track. He's on the right. I don't know they're going to find a lot of difference between us on this one. It's such an important issue. There's so much at stake we can't afford not to. I think I've never hit the ball unless I swing the bat. And I told the story before, but President Reagan, everybody around him told him, you will never get an arms treaty with Gorbachev. Everybody told him he was wasting his time, don't even do it. His goal was just let's just get one more meeting with them. That one more meeting with Gorbachev led to an arms reduction unlike we've ever had in the world before. I think we could do the same. We need to do the same thing here. We need to pursue both of them. We need to. They may fail, but it's going to get the discussion started. And I know it's possible because it's been done recently with 2 different states in Hawaii and North Dakota. So I think it's possible. It's really unfair for the federal government to say all the states east of Colorado can control their lands, but you guys out west, that's our playground. We're not going to allow you to own your own, govern your own state and own your own land. It becomes a constitutional issue that way as well.
The constitutionality of the immigration issue, because it's a federal question, there's always going to be a dialogue and swirling around, what's the state doing this? Well, you've failed. Come on, let's move forward and provide a pattern that we've done. And so we've taken the lead there. The issue, it's not a constitutional issue on getting the federal lands back. It's a contractual issue. In 1894, the federal government entered into a contractual agreement with the territory of this that eventually became the state of Utah. It becomes a contractual issue.
if I understand right, it also is in the late 70s where the federal government passes a law saying that they'll manage and dispose of the land the way they want to.
I'd like to go into deeper, but my wife says sometimes you just say too much. But here's what I'm saying. It's a simple, in my mind, it's a simple issue to resolve. The way that we've dealt with it in the 70s and 80s and with the Sagebrush Rebellion, it's a different approach. It's an angle that is sound and sensical. And I know that some of us talk about, well, we're not talking about all 70% or 68% of the federal lands. We're talking about the BLM lands that are there in the bill. We're not talking about coming in Zions National Park, our treasures, and prostitute them. We're talking about, in a responsible way, gathering the resources there, which will take, there needs to be stewardship and effort in that process and great dialogue. Let me answer your question. I have no problem if I believe in the principle challenging the constitutionality of it. What I do have a problem is legislative bodies not having the courage to fight the battle and saying, well, we're going to pass this. We know it's unconstitutional. It's going to tie up the courts. We're going to go ahead and pass this because it's popular. For heaven's sake, stand up and be courageous and do the right thing. But part of the Constitution and all that is to look at it from different angles. So in the right circumstance, no problem about passing legislation that may push the envelope of the Constitution, but we have to do the good thing for the best reason.
Let me ask this then, moving off this subject now. Utah County has had a lot of clout in the legislature over the past few years, a lot of seniority. Many lawmakers that have been in the House of Representatives for a long time are now moved on, run for different offices. So we've lost a little bit of our influence, or have a potential to lose some of our influence. What are both of you going to do to make sure that District 48 keeps its clout and influence in the legislature, and also that Utah County still remains a listened to force in the legislature?
I've talked a lot about the capacity of District 48, and I frankly believe to my core that we have a stewardship to lead with correct principles and the very best practices. And as we do that, we'll be a lighthouse, not only in the state of Utah, but the country and even the world. How do we maintain the clout? Well, we have two very tenured senators that live in District 48 that have a great record of effectively with addressing issues that need to be addressed. We have a great capacity with the delegation that comes from Utah County. I've heard again that one of the challenges in this race, this District 48 race now, is you have two great candidates. Well, I think let the candidates speak for themselves. This is a hard-fought campaign. We're keeping it clean. We're seeking to stay issue-based. That should speak for itself on what's going to take place going forward. This has been a refining experience that District 48 will be better served as a result of this primary election.
I would agree with Kevin. I think it has been a hard-fought race, and it does make you better. But I think Chris Herald didn't start out in a leadership position when he went up on the Hill. And he started out aggressively, right off the bat. He had a vision of what he wanted to do, and I thought he did a great job. Now, I may not agree with everything that he did, but I have to applaud him for how aggressively he went up there and got involved, and didn't bide his time. He went and got involved. I would intend to do the same thing. And the reason I think I can do that is because I've got some business experience. I think I understand budgets. I think I understand unions. I think I understand the issues that we're facing. So I think to get involved right away, I think that's why I want to get involved. I want to go up and get involved. I want to start, I want to get involved in leadership right away.
Hey, changing direction just a little bit. Kevin, I wonder if you could elaborate a little bit on your golf course business and the relationship you have with the government in there in terms of your taxes or subsidies that might be connected there. And a question, is there a conflict of interest, or would there be, for you as a state legislator, to be a golf course owner under a contractual arrangement with the government?
That's a great question. First of all, when you talk about subsidies, they don't exist. In fact, we're in a market where publicly owned golf courses are subsidized several $100,000 a year. Number one. And number two, they don't pay taxes. I pay property tax, I pay personal property tax, I pay sales tax. If I buy a load of sand or fertilizer, I pay tax on that. I have to...
The same rate that anybody else would pay?
The same rate that you would pay, yes. There's not a subsidy there. Cascade Golf Center, by the way, it's a beautiful day to golf today. And Father's Day is coming up, and if you'd like to buy a Father's Day gift, Cascade Golf Center it's 115 acres. There's 50 acres that are, or 55 acres, between 50 and 55 acres that are leased from the city. We have water that we pay a market rate for. We have there's a land lease that was determined by and approved in 1967 through the process of vetting the issues. A legislative body approved it, and it's been unanimously approved again. We live in a challenging, it's such a challenging market right now because so many municipalities, in fact, it's a great example of let's get government out of doing what the private sector could do. If we wanted to have millions and millions and millions of dollars for education, for example, we just have to say, cities, don't subsidize your golf courses anymore and send the difference to the education. But so that's an issue. The other issue is look, we're a part-time legislative body. We send teachers, we send business leaders, we send across a broad section, we send farmers to the legislative body to make decisions. That's the beauty of it. California, they were doing pretty good till they had their legislature go full-time. So we have an opportunity to weigh in with our experience. I don't think we want to say, don't take your experience and your perspective and weigh that in. I don't see a conflict of interest. If there is one, then it's just simply we step out of the debate and let it go forward. But the beauty of the dialogue is that we can have a teacher that's elected as representative to weigh in on educational issues. That we can have a farmer that's elected weigh in on agricultural issues. That's the genius of the system and the opportunity, the pattern that we have. Did I answer all of your questions?
I think
there?
so, yeah.
Okay.
That question didn't come from me.
I know, because you want to weigh in on candy issues up there. So.
Okay, Taz, I got one for you. In your business, I assume you expect strict honesty and accountability from your employees. What would you do with an employee that you found was charging his personal auto repairs to your company?
I just want to say something. That did not come from me.
I just want all coaches to be held to the same standard. That's all I want.
Fair enough.
So I think that's in reference, for those of you who don't know, that's in reference to Coach Wong, who had some repairs done on his vehicle and charged him to the school with the intention of reimbursing him.
But the reason I asked the question, though, is to try to probe your point of view that you would adopt or have as a legislator. You've made Coach Wong a centerpiece, basically, of your campaign, and am I wrong?
I have not made Coach Wong a centerpiece of my campaign, but I'm happy to talk about it.
He's been a presence, but this isn't about him. I'm just saying, at what point do you look the other way? If a state legislator, you're in a position of a public trust, and don't you have to really hold people accountable?
Yes, you do. You have to hold people accountable, and everybody should be held to the same standard. So where I have a problem in the Coach Wong situation is where you hold one coach to one standard and everybody else to another standard, and penalize for success rather than rewarded for success. So did he make mistakes? Absolutely. Would he have paid back the $300 that he got fired for? Yes, he would have if they would have let him. So I think it's unfortunate that he can raise $2 million in today's environment for a school that needs the money and be fired for it. I think that's unfortunate. Did he make a mistake? Absolutely. Would he admit it? Absolutely. Did he influence kids for the better? Hundreds and hundreds of kids for the better. A coach who came at 4 a.m. every morning and walked the track thinking of ways to improve kids' lives and receives hundreds of letters from missionaries saying thank you for helping me learn to work and to learn teamwork and to learn skills that I would have never had life skills.
So how do you
fired
translate this to basically your legislative philosophy or your philosophy as a state legislator if you're elected?
So I'm supportive of people who do a great job. So I would support people who do a great job in the legislature. I would be supportive of teachers who do a great job. I think in the Coach Wong situation, I think I would have taken him in and said, you've done a great job raising funds. You've made some mistakes. Let's fix those. Help me raise funds for the entire district. So instead of being $2 million behind now, right now we got a foot in the bucket, let's let him raise money for the entire school. I think that people make mistakes, absolutely. But I think you have to be able to evaluate those mistakes in light of what was going on. So for him, he didn't spend school money. He was spending donors' money. I mean, I think if you look at it from my perspective, if he would have asked me, can I repair my car for $300, I would have given him the $300. I've given money to every school that I've ever been involved with. In fact, I played in a golf tournament Monday for the Alpine School District for Lone Peak High. So I'm supportive of, I understand that the needs of schools and the needs for money. So as it relates, so yeah, I think you have to be able to evaluate the situation as they occur. But look, there needs to be standards, and people need to be held accountable.
You know, in the Alpine School District, we have a coach at Lone Peak that has had some time. I'm not saying that there's an analogy there, but one thing that we need to do is I've worked up with the Alpine Foundation for over, maybe over a decade. One of the great concerns that I've always had is making sure that we have transparency, making sure that we have protection. The last thing we want to do is someone, if you have checks and balances and proper protection and follow those procedures, that will be a great strength. And as we look at situations that do come up, we need to look at not only protecting the individuals across the board. If we're going to move forward and have business education partnerships and have the community engaged, they've got to have the confidence. And I think that's there. But we need to make sure that there's transparency and accountability.
Do you gentlemen see a role for the legislature in fixing the kind of loose money practices that have been going on around Utah high schools?
10 years ago, I spoke with the foundation, and we could see with some of the thing you have is you have those that are really engaged, want to make a difference and be involved. But there can be situations that can rise, and again, if we have the role of the legislative body would be to establish the parameters and protection that we would protect everybody across the board, the one receiving the benefit of the donation as well as those making the donation.
Yeah, I hope the question's clear. There's indications out of the state auditor's office that this is not just a Timpview issue, that it's widespread around Utah. What is the legislature's role, if any?
Look, I guess I would answer the question this way. I think sports, I think arts, I think bands, I think all that is an important part. Drama clubs, I think they're all an important part of our education. If you sit in a classroom individually, you are tested individually. It's an individual exercise to compete in the classroom.
But it's athletics where the money is, unless you're an American fork, I guess.
That's right. That's
right.
right. So that necessarily they have to raise money. And I think for me, print the policies, fine. I don't think it's a legislative issue. I think it's a local issue that should be dealt locally with the school districts. But there ought to be a clear policy for them. Just like anybody, make sure everybody understands the policy and follow it. But when there's no policy and then you're held responsible for a policy that didn't exist, I think that's where you get in trouble.
And probably establishing the policy, making sure it's articulated and clear could be done legislatively, would you say?
Yeah, I think the legislature should stay out of it. I think in my mind it ought to be a school district issue, and by district, the needs vary.
I guess I would disagree. I think it needs to be the parameters, and then allow within those parameters. That's what the state auditor is. They have their parameters. You have the parameters, and let each district either follow the rules or not get engaged in that type of process.
Okay. What is a bill, a specific bill, that you feel needs to be enacted? You go in the legislature, you're going to be writing bills, you're going to be signing on to bills. What's one that you think needs to be enacted? The one bill. If you could make one bill, what would it be?
As a business owner, we have a tremendous amount of impact from the regulatory bodies of the state. You know, the Division of Environmental Quality or the Division of Motor Vehicles or whatever. The legislative body will enact a law, and it goes through the checks and balances of the judicial, the executive, and the legislative body, and it comes into fruition. And then an agency will seek to meet the legislative intent and create a whole bunch of rules and regulations. I would like to see a lot more pruning and trimming of the agency rules and regulations. Our friends in North Idaho, at the beginning of every legislative session, they take all the body of regulatory rules, and they last 1 year. And so they affirm them, and it makes a easy either affirm or set aside those that are not making sense, where they've lost touch, and then affirm the rest. And it gives a quick and easy. There's other. I'm not saying that there's other ways of doing it, but that would be an efficient, effective way that we could learn from another state on dealing with.
What's the name of your bill?
Pruning Peaches 101.
Taz?
Let's see. I've often joked that I'd be the anti-law legislator. I think we pass so many meaningless laws up there that I think it gets to be a little bit tough. So I think if I were to pass one bill right now, I think it would have to do with our state government is growing faster than our economy is growing. And I think that's a problem, and I think eventually that's going to lead to tax increases, which I don't think certainly I wouldn't be supportive of. In my mind, I think we need to be, we need to be finding service. We need to be, as citizens, we ought to be buying the services that we want. The state government shouldn't be deciding which services we want and don't want. And I think, one example locally here is Utopia, that none of the current administration chose, but they are saddled with it, and they are having to pay for it. And whether you use it or not, you're paying for it. So I think that's an example of things we shouldn't be doing. So if we could tie our growth in government to our GDP growth, I think that would be something that I'd be very supportive of.
I want to challenge that just quickly here, because the chart that I'm looking at has all of state government, social services, higher ed, criminal justice, infrastructure and general government, economic development, natural resources, and National Guard Veterans Affairs, virtually flat since 2000. And the growth in state government is coming almost entirely by increases in education funding.
Okay, and UDOT. You didn't mention UDOT. So spending in UDOT and education and social services is growing.
At UDOT, what do you mean?
Department of Transportation.
But you're talking about the freeway funding?
I'm talking about all spending, yes. So if you add bonds to that, then you'll see growth. So we're spending more money through bonding. I mean, a lot of states will tax and spend. We bond and spend. And I'm supportive of it. I'm supportive of what we've done. I think we've done the right things. But I think at some point we've got to limit the growth of our state government.
But isn't that mixing apples and oranges, where you have a one-time bond versus ongoing funding?
Kind of like the one-time tax increase we got during the floods. So during the floods, we went from 5% sales tax to 6% to pay for the floods. It's never come back. So I think that's the problem. The problem is we keep incrementally spending more, and I think we have got to find services that aren't providing what we want as citizens. I think, Governor Perry inspired me when he said we should get rid of the Department of Education, Department of Transportation, and Department of Commerce. I think he forgot one of them. But I didn't agree with his politics, but I agreed with the thought. I think the thought is valid. Are there departments that technology has passed us by? I think there are. I think there's examples of things that we don't need the service anymore, or technology can provide it faster and cheaper, and we ought to be looking at those pretty aggressively.
Kevin, do you agree that a big bond for a needed highway project should be counted in the overall mix of growth of government?
What you do is you have to make sure that if you have one-time funding, that it lasts the amortization of that debt. So I would say that the bottom line is we have to make a value judgment. Do we want to be sitting on the freeway for 2.5 hours, or do we want to be in our homes with an effective flow of traffic? Our traffic is tied to economic vitality. It's strong communities. It's tied to those key things that we value. And as we look at going forward with the Utah County going to double in population by 2040, we've got to address those issues. Now, you asked me the question, should bonding, should one-time funding be a part of the growth of government? I would say no.
I wonder if each of you could spend a minute and tell us about your public service. What is your background in public service?
I'm completely new to public service. I have never been elected to an elected position, and I think that's a plus. I think right now we need new, fresh ideas on Capitol Hill. I think we need to have people that have experience in the business world, in the real world, on Capitol Hill. I think that's a plus.
Let me rephrase. Let's call it community service. You've been active in the community. What are some of the things that you're proud of there?
Okay. I've been in. I've created a position for myself. I've carved out a chance for me to give back. I think Israel gets it right when they require all of their kids to serve 1 year in the military, and I think that's a positive thing. They get a better appreciation for the country they live in. And I think, in my life, I haven't had a chance to serve in a government position. I have served in several community service opportunities. I've done a lot of church work over my life. I've volunteered for the coaching staff at the local high school. I have been involved in creating the BYU Management Society at the student level. I created a partnership with the Taft Middle School in Boston, which was a middle school that exists today, so that the kids from an underprivileged school could come onto Harvard's campus and participate and enjoy the activities and the facility that we built there, or that the school built there, not we. So I've been very active in, I think one of the things that I'm most proud of is we started a partnership with disadvantaged kids, and I would say mentally challenged kids, and we called them the Fab Five, and we hired them at Kencraft, and it was a good partnership that we sponsored, and we had these kids came in and did low-skilled labor, and they inspired everybody in the plant. We paid half their salary. The folks that provided them paid half their salary. The state paid half their salary. And it was a great activity for everybody. It inspired everybody. We called them the Fab Five. So I think I've been involved to a large degree all my life.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, Kevin, community service.
One of the things that Professor Murray taught me is if you're a successful entrepreneur, if you can have success in business, you can give things back to the community. And I took that to heart 25 years ago, and I'm grateful for the opportunity I've had to be involved in serving in the community. I'm grateful for a supportive wife and children. I was talking to my oldest son the other day, and I said, son, you're part of this service that we've been able to be involved in the community, from serving appointed by Governor Leavitt to serve on the Consumer Protection Agency Advisory Board, to being involved chairman and board member of the Chamber of Commerce, Kids on the Move, Healthy Utah Valley, Alpine Foundation. Just my two passions would be the children. Kids on the Move was a wonderful organization that not was but is a vital organization. We had an opportunity at a crossroads to work, bring the community together, to see a significant building facility built with donated funds and labor. Was praised at $3.6 million when it was dedicated on the day of dedication. All throughout my life, I'm grateful to have had the opportunity to, through the support of a loving wife and children, to be heavily involved in bringing people together and being a part of trying to make the community a better place.
Thank you. Taz, this week you were endorsed by the Parents for Choice in Education, and this is a strong voice for vouchers from the state that allow a parent to choose where to have their child educated. And I think recently Mitt Romney has been sort of edging toward this same kind of a notion from his position in the national campaign. What are your views on this, both of you?
On vouchers specifically? Yeah. Vouchers is a pretty divisive issue down here, and I think it's been an interesting approach. But again, I would go back to my comment earlier. I'm not very patient with ideas that don't help kids get a better education. I think vouchers, charter schools, private schools, I think public schools. I'm a big public school supporter. I made my kids go to public school because I wanted them to get a public school education. But I think they're all part of the solution. Vouchers for what they do, the criticism of them is that they take money away from schools. They take some of the most supportive parents away from schools. And I think that's, there's a fair criticism there. But at the end of the day, if the kid's getting a better education, I'm supportive of it. And I think we need to do things within our own schools that will help compete and keep kids. And it's resulted in some good things. I mean, the competition right now has resulted in accelerated reading programs, in dual immersion programs. It's resulted in some great innovative education processes in the public schools, and I think that's what we need.
I think you'll see that we agree on much of what has been said there. I appreciate that the Parents' Choice Education has been willing to endorse what we're doing as well. The concept is, what is the vision? We cannot miss on education. The growth that we talk about, doubling in population by the year 2040, they're coming primarily from our children. If we fail our children, if we don't do what will provide the very best education for them, we have sold our future. One of the most important investments that we can make is in education. And what we need to do is we need to recognize that not all of us have all the answers. The best government is a government close to people, as I've said before. We need to gather around the table, much like Provo did as they did their 2030 visioning. You get the stakeholders around the table that have a desire to see and mold the direction of what the future needs to be, and you map it out. And there's answers across the board. There's answers in charter schools, there's answers in homeschool, there's answers in public education, there's answers that we haven't come up with yet. But as we have a healthy, productive dialogue and work together with enough humility to recognize that we can listen and learn from each other, great things are going to happen, and they will happen. Now, the voucher issue was supported in District 48. That was an issue, but it's been voted on, and it's been declined by the state. I'd say let's learn from the past and build for the future and move on. Not that vouchers is not a bad idea. It's a good idea. So we need to take the positive elements of that and build a solution going in the future.
Thank you.
I'd like to take this. My battery's dead on my mic, so I'll try to be loud. Okay. I gave this question also to the county commissioners, but I think it's relevant to the legislature as well, as it's been brought up at least twice in the last 2 sessions, is the issue of a non-discrimination bill. I'm curious what your thoughts are on, should there be a statewide law that is protecting those of race or gender or of their sexual orientation? Do we need a statewide non-discrimination law passed?
No.
I think you're trying to start to legislate morality a little bit there, so I think I would agree.
What about the idling ordinance? You know, right now we have a situation where if I drive across a city line, which I don't even know where it is sometimes, and I let my car idle for a minute, I'm in violation of the law where I wasn't before.
15 years ago, when I served on the Environmental Quality Committee for the Chamber of Commerce, Governor Levitt came down and gave Provost Seating an award because of what Mayor George Stewart was doing. He was standing out on University Avenue holding a sign, "Move, don't sit here and idle." Mm-hmm. The problem with idling is that it creates a pollution problem. We do have a pollution problem along Wasatch Front. So we need to be sensitive to the issue. Do we want to have clean air? And what are we willing to do? And how much can we regulate clean air? It becomes a regulatory issue.
I guess what I'm asking, though, is do you want a patchwork of laws city by city, or should there be a statewide standard or a standard applying to certain counties, maybe, which have higher traffic than others?
Some of the best air quality is on the other side in Heber Valley. Some of the worst air quality is on this side of the Wasatch Front. And so you need it. I'm sorry, I don't. It's really probably best handled by a county by county, because one county, Utah County, has a different issue, PM10 and other particulates issue than Heber Valley does. However, the state Division of Environmental Quality oversees these issues, and so in that sense, a legislative body can set some parameters and make sure that we're tempering and honing that regulatory agency in a manner that allows the counties to deal with that issue appropriately.
Thanks.
I think we're overregulated. I think if you really want to clean up the air, let's use the natural gas that we have in Utah. So, you know, I would be a big supporter of having all state vehicles run natural gas. I think that's, if we really want, natural gas burns, I don't know, is it 70% cleaner? It burns about, it probably burns a little bit better on the engine. We've got plenty of it. We don't have to buy anything from foreign sources. If we want to build, help build our economy for all the right reasons, we ought to be running natural gas in all of our cars. But again, I don't want to regulate that. I think that's got to be a free market solution. But if we ask the state vehicles to do it for the right reasons, and an enterprising person starts building natural gas stations, I think then I think other people will start buying natural gas vehicles. I think it's the right thing to do. But to regulate, to write regulations about idling from the state level, I think the state level's responsibility is if a city or a county steps out of line and starts to impinge on our rights as citizens, that's when I think the state legislature should get involved.
I just would comment, and I appreciate what you're saying about overregulation. That's an important notion. What we had 15 and 20 years ago is we were threatened to be shut down economically because of our air levels, and we had a federal agency seeking to regulate the air quality here. And so as a state legislative body, we need to keep that type of separation and balance of power in check. I just add that.
Right. Well, I think one last bite at the apple, Billy. Go ahead.
Both Senator Lee and I believe it's Congressman Chaffetz have talked to me about sometime in the future to cut the federal spending problems, they're going to have to cut the money sent to the states that the states depend on to run their governments and run the services that the states provide. That's going to lead to a cut in services that the state does provide. So what are the things that you might look at as a state legislator to cut? What are or make more efficient or change? What are those state services that you're willing to look at and say, we don't need this anymore, or this can be done in a different way?
One thing that we have to remember is that 27% of our state budget comes from federal funds. And so if you squeeze that down and we're not getting that, that's a significant impact on the state budget. It'd be wonderful to be independent as a state. So part of the answer is in business, if the bottom line isn't what you want it to do, you do two things. You can either seek to increase revenue or cut costs and bring that into balance. You've asked the cutting cost issue. I would say we need to look at the revenue side and make sure we're doing all that we can to have healthy economic vitality, that we're getting our public lands under control and flowing in. As you look at our state, when we're the best managed state. It can be a challenge to say we need to cut here and here and here and here. But there are always opportunities to look at and streamline and bring maybe one thing that we would do is freeze hiring for a time, or we can apply good business principles to that area to make a difference.
Yeah, I would say give us our federal lands back and keep your money. I really think that's a big issue. I think constitutionally, we should have rights and access to our own ground out here. And I think that if they wanted to keep all their money and quit mandating things and let us run our own state, I think we run a pretty good state. I think we would do a great job with it.
Thanks a lot. I wonder if each of you could take a minute and just sort of sum up. Go ahead, Taz, you first.
All right, I think that the challenge is differentiating between Keven and I. I think I have a lot of respect for Keven. I think he's a good opponent. He's made me better. So I think the ways to differentiate would be starting with, I've knocked on probably 800 doors myself. I'm a good listener. I'm not saying Kevin's not a good listener. I'm saying that I have the time and I have the energy and I have the interest to know what you think. And together with my wife, we probably knocked on over 1,400 doors. When we were running the delegate race, I met with every one of you individually. In fact, if the delegates are here, can you raise your hands? There's quite a few delegates still in the audience. I think you guys did a great job and appreciated the time that I was able to spend with each one of you. But I think I've carved out a position in my life, in my business, where I can spend some time and give back. And I think that's important. I was told by a guy named Albert Gordon, who is the CEO of Kidder Peabody, when I graduated from high school, he said, you need to nourish your roots. If you do one thing in this life, nourish your roots. And that really resonated with me, because if I benefit from what I've been brought up doing, other people will too. That's why I started coaching football 2 years ago. That's why I've wanted to take time now and spend time in the state government. I've got some skills that I've acquired over the years in business, running manufacturing companies that have unions, and if we're going to make any improvements in the unions, in the education system, we better have some experience in dealing with unions. So I think that's an issue. I've been endorsed by the Taxpayers Associations, who are the watchdogs of taxes in our state. I've been endorsed by the Parents for Choice in Education. So I think I'm working hard. I'm dedicated to the process. And I really want to give back to a state that's been very good to me, and use the skills that I've been able to acquire and been blessed with.
Thanks.
Throughout history, there have been times and occasions when our nation has been held together by the strength and the power of the federal government. This is a time that, as states, we need to step up. And Utah is in a unique position to do that, to lead, not only lead with vision, but hard work and common sense and a track record that can be patterned in every state across the union. I believe that at the forefront, the heart of this state of Utah is this district in this area. This is a defining time for our country and for our state. And one thing that we need to remember is that as we go to that poll and we make our selection and who we're going to vote and support, that it doesn't stop there. I ask for your vote, but I also ask for your trust and your confidence and your involvement ongoing. Together, as we work and listen and move forward, we can be the state that we're meant to be and be the source of leadership and principal example that will help and create an environment for people to flourish so that they can say, we are blessed with a strong home and community, we're blessed with economic vitality, and we're blessed with properly limited government. That is a vision. As we focus here, we will be able to move forward in a manner that we're meant to move forward. So I ask for your vote, your trust, and your ongoing involvement. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. That concludes this segment. Thank you very much for coming.